Hi everybody, welcome to yet another FLUMEN Paragliding tips and tricks video podcast. I hope you're doing just great. As most of the people, I'm also in the quarantine, so the videos that I'm making are all just based in the classroom. In this episode, I will explain to you how to check the line of the lengths of your paraglider. This video is a part 2 of the lines maintenance series, so stay tuned. So I will explain to you the method I use that does not need any laser or workshop. This method you can do anywhere, and once you get practice you will be able to do it quite fast and correct. In some countries it is obligatory to do the wing check in some official workshops, so it will not be accepted. However, still you will be able to control the wing trim much more often and precisely. If you don't have access to a workshop, this video will show you the tool that you need, and especially if you have a tandem business or paragliding school. You can use this video as a DIY video following the steps. So before moving to another stage, pause the video and then continue. Maybe the first time watch it entirely and later use the steps. Preliminaries. Before doing any trim check, we need to prepare the essentials, and we have to do it correctly. We need a spreadsheet where we will put the factory line lengths and the measured lengths to see how much difference there is. You could do your own Excel sheet, which is fine, but we in NAPI use the standard sheet so we can share it between the pilots and the schools. So once someone uploads the line lengths, someone else does not have to do it again if you get it. So in the description section, I'm leaving you the link to the empty spreadsheet, and also I will leave the Dropbox link to the wings I checked, so maybe you find your own. But if all this is new to you, please do all the steps I'm explaining. Get the line plan from the company's website and the total line lengths if possible, and if not, the line lengths and you will have to do some math. Some companies don't exist anymore, so maybe you will be unable to find data. You can always try at some workshops. I could not find the line lengths for a Sunglider tandem, so in the end the tandem went to trash as we could not check the trim of a tandem. Finding your line plan. Let's assume you're doing this from scratch, so the first thing you need to find is the line plan of your paraglider. The line plan is the drawing where you can see the names of the lines and the position of the attachment points. You find yours and then you print it, at least for the first time. It is crucial, especially if your wing has a larger number of one row of lines than others. It means, let's say, the C row of the lines have 14 lines per side, but only 10 A's and 10 B's. Let us learn how to read the line plan so you don't make some mistakes. On the line plan, you will typically find all the lines marked with the name of each line, so each piece has a code to it. It is there if you need to change some specific lines. Also, maybe we will need to use it to get the total length by calculating. To measure the total length by laser or the trim, we need the total distance for each attachment point, so the length from the maillon to the attachment point. The attachment points, the total length, are named by the letter of the riser and the number, starting from the center. The closest A attachment to the wing center is then called A1. Don't mix this with the A1 main line. Let's now mark on the line plan all the A's, B's, C's, D's and E's if they are there. The stabilo line and the brakes we do not measure, so you leave them out. Now, let's see if all the A's have the partner on the same rib. The rib is the seam that goes from the leading to the trailing edge. Here is a line plan of a bit more complicated wing design. You can see that some attachment points don't have an A and B partner. These we will leave out, so on the drawing you cross them. Good. As you can imagine, when using a method without a laser, some lines can't be checked, but we will assume they change as their neighboring line, so no problem at all. Stabilo, we will not touch them as well. The brakes, yes, but we will see that later. Let us now prepare the Excel sheet to add the line lengths. You can make your own, or you can use the one I provided here. It works great, so I recommend it. You should fill it in millimeters. The sheet is locked so you don't make changes that can cause later problems. It can be unlocked, but really it's not necessary. So cells that are intended to get filled are unlocked. The rest of the cells are locked. First table is where we will fill the line lengths. The second table is the difference between the lines, which is calculated automatically. These values are the ones we want to get by trimming, or at least as close we can. Then we have two tables, one for each side, where we will fill them with the data we get by measuring. The last two tables will give us the difference between the original and the measured values. The sides get distorted differently due to preference sign intermolling or spiraling, so it is essential to do both sides. Open the line length sheet, the one that you got from the manual of your Paraglider. Some brands put all the data in the manual. That is great. It really shows the seriousness and transparency. Some brands don't. Find the correct size and let's start adding the data in the sheet. So A1 into A1 spot and so on. Remember that if some lines don't have a corresponding partner, don't put them in, so skip. Many make mistakes there. If you are unable to get the total lengths of the lines and you have only the lengths of each separate line, you will need to sum them. If in centimeters, change it all to millimeter, so add 0 at the end. So for this model of a Paraglider, Mentor 4, I don't have the total lengths. They are not in the manual. So in order to get the total lengths, we will need to sum each line that goes to the point. So to get the A1 to be able to put it into the table, we will need, so this would be the A1. So we will need to sum the line AG1 plus A1. So that would be for the, let's say it's a small size, it's A1 plus AG1. Okay, so this will give us the line. If I want the A2, then it's A1 plus AG2. The things are a bit more complicated when we have a bit of separation, like in this case. So we can see that we have, to get the A5, we need to sum AG5, AM1, and A3. So AG5, AM1, and A3 to get the A5. To get the A6, I will sum the AG6, AM1, and A3. So in case of A5, it's A3 plus AM1 plus AG5. This is a bit tricky because you can make a mistake. So in order to not make the mistake when you're putting these numbers in, I would really recommend that you do something like this. Let's zoom it in a bit. So I was adding here the when you want to put the numbers, instead of summing it on the calculator, you can just put equal and then number plus number plus number, and at the end you get the sum. So you can check if you made some mistake during the process, if you did something wrong. So use this option, it really works great to do it. Putting the data correctly. If you did all correctly, you should have some numbers that are all more or less close to each other. If there is some significant difference in numbers, it's worth checking the input, as maybe you made an error. Yep, it takes a bit of time, but once done, you have it forever. Measuring the lines. To start measuring, you will need some 6 to 8 meters of straight distance to extend the lines. Normally you do one side at a time, so it's doable even if you don't have much space. A hole can be good. You will need to free the lines, and then the riser you need to fix to something solid, preferably so that it does not move too much around, and preferably if it can stay horizontal all the time. And would be good maybe to hook the brake somewhere for something else. How to measure? It is an excellent if you are two people doing this, but I can do it completely alone. One can be the one that pulls the lines and the other measures and writes the lengths. If you're measuring a tandem, it's important before you start to put the trimmers in a neutral position. Usually it's when all the risers are at the same height, but to be sure, check the manual. So you find the A1, you pull it a bit and check that the line is free. Then following the seam, you find the B1. You pick the B1 as well and put it next to the A1. The same force should pull both, and they have to be free. As we do not measure the total length, but the difference between two lines, any force is good as long as the lines are stretched and the force is the same on A1 and the B1. So you get them close, you put the ruler and you measure the difference between the A and the B. If you put the ruler in the middle of the knot, then you measure to the same spot on the other line. It does not matter where you put the starting point as long as it is the same as the finish point. Careful! If the line fell from the attachment point, you put it back before measuring. Also, it can be a weak point if you don't return it back. You write the number in the Excel, and now you release the B1 holding the A1 and grab the C1. Just slide the hand from B1 to C1 following the seam. You put the C1 next to an A1 and you take the measurement. Then you repeat A1 with the D1 and then if needed A1 with E1. If the C or the D line is longer than A line, then you will put in the Excel sheet a negative number, so minus and then the length. Most of the paragliders have C's and D's longer than the A and B. If you don't put the minus, you will later see the error in the error sheet. So now repeat the whole process for both sides. Do one side, check a bit for errors in case you measure something wrong, and then do the other side. Errors. When you check all, the first thing we need to check is if there are some strange values, as you have not added minus or you grabbed something wrong. Big numbers mean some errors in the measurement, or you added some incorrect numbers. Check if it was positive or negative number. Again, maybe the data you added in the first table is wrong. What numbers to expect? In the error table, in general, you should get numbers in red, negative numbers. That means that the line is shorter than it should be and how much. If it's not red, it means it's longer than it should be. Can happen. You will notice that there are differences in the errors. It is normal. The thing is, not all the lines have the same load during the flight. There may be thinner or different material, and also the way you turn, and even the lines when they come out of the factory were not perfect. The knots can make a difference as well, so plus minus 2-3 millimeters is completely fine. It depends on the company, but no one is perfect. Smaller tolerances cost money. To make a cheaper wing, sometimes tolerances are not so important, which is fine if it's a low aspect ratio glider. Tolerances. There are some tolerances involved with the lines. Of course, small differences are not so significant, but it all depends on the aspect ratio of the wing and the size. Smaller sized wings obviously should have a lower tolerance than the big wings and tandem. That is why pilots flying a tandem with some huge trim problems can fly a lot of hours until they fall from the sky. The more advanced wing or higher aspect ratio, less tolerances are allowed. The wings in average on the M size, those with an aspect ratio below 5, will be prone to stalling with more or less 7 to 8 centimeters, and you can feel the wing is not going okay with 4 centimeters of difference. With an aspect ratio of 5 to 6, you will feel the wing fly slower with 3 cm shorter lines, and with 6 cm you are entering to stall problems. With an aspect ratio of 6 to 7, like C and D class, you feel the wing fly slower with 2 cm shorter back lines, and with 4 cm you are entering in the stall problems. 3 cm you can really feel. With an aspect ratio above 7, you will feel the wing fly slower with 1 cm, and with 2 cm you will stall. Now you know why the line's dimensional stability on a comp glider is so important. The tandem will fly with the tolerances until 7 or 8 centimeters, and what pilots normally do is when they see that the wing is not flying correctly, they open the trims and fly with the trims open, but this is already playing with the voodoo magic. Have the wing trimmed properly and use the trimmers for flying faster or compensating the load, but not for trimming your out-trimmed wing. There is a curious thing that even with the same material used in lines, but different type of braiding or different brand, some lines go out of trim faster than the other. So it's not only the material, but it's also the braiding. For us that do trimming more often, we already know which model and brand will have more errors. To put the wing back into the closest possible trim position, you should have the errors below 10 millimeters. Of course, on a comp wing, you want it below 5 millimeters, as best as you can. For those small differences, you need more time. How the actual trimming is done, I'm not adding into this video. It requires a few mathematical calculations, and you could do something wrong during the process. So this part is done by someone that really knows the thing. If you measure the wing, the experienced person would immediately know how to do the trimming. Nevertheless, there are some tricks that can be used by anyone, even without the experience. Some paragliders come with already looped BCD lines on the maillons, as the company during the designing process took into account the line shrinkage. A lot of times you can find this in the manual of your paraglider, in the maintenance sections, that after a certain number of flying hours, you need to release the loops and lengthen the brakes. Having this extra loop is so great, and it makes the trimming so much easier. For that reason, I really love some brands like Triple Seven Paragliders. The guys take into account this and leave you the loops so you can keep your wing with perfect performance. Brands that I really dislike are the ones that make the loops so tight so you can't make loops. In short, there are different ways to resolve the problem of short lines. So one is mentioned, realizing or loosing the loops. Another method is changing the maillons. to longer or shorter, depending on what you want, but what is mostly done is shortening the front lines, so they meet up with the difference caused on the back lines. This is a very efficient way, but requires some math. Another way is unsewing the lines and resewing them again. This I would do only if I want perfection, or I need to fix one particular line. Unsewing the lines and adjusting can be a bit tricky, so it's not for beginners. The thing is that when you're looping on the maillon, you affect all the upper lines. Sometimes one is really out of trim and you need to do something special. On a tandem or A or B wing, I would not bother too much with perfection. If I want my Paraglider to be perfect, that's another story. And also I could play with some allowed tolerances to make my wing more agile or faster or slower, depending on where I'm going to fly. What does not work is stretching the lines. They go back after 2 or 3 hours, so don't do it. Arc control. If you want to go more in details about the arc of your wing, then use the blue row. The measurement is done by comparing A1 to other A's. If you're going to do an arc control, then it is important to do it before you start measuring the rest, as the A lines are the base. First fix the arc and then the trim. Also, another thing that can happen is that the risers are different in length. A couple of millimeters will make the wing turn in a non-desired direction, especially when flying with the speed bar. So to know if the sides are symmetrical, then you do the symmetry check. You put the risers together next to each other and then you compare A1 right with A1 left and so on until you check all the lines. Doing only a symmetry check does not tell you if the wing has bad trim, but it will tell you if there is a tendency for a turn. Unfortunately, the risers can come out from the factory with some difference, and on a high aspect ratio glider it will make a preference in turn. It is not always the cause. If the trim is perfect and the symmetry is perfect, it can be also that the sides of the Paraglider, the canopy, are not symmetrical. Some companies do a fantastic job in sewing and doing perfect symmetry, and some don't. You need to check the lines to see if they are maybe damaged. If the lines are old, it is good to check them visually and by touch thoroughly. I found once 2 lines that had the core broken, but the sheeting was still untouched. Scary. I always look at other wings when they fly to see their surface, especially the top surface. If it's not super smooth and there are some transversal wrinkles, indents or trenches, it can be a result of a bad trim. It can also be a problem with the plastic rods, but many times it's a problem with the trim. The top surface should look smooth, with no wrinkles almost. That means the best performance possible. I go for the option of changing the lines if I reach the declared time of change, or when the lines got so distorted that it's impossible to make some good trim out of them. If it's too much work to put it back, then I rather change the lines. Recommendation. It would be good to check the trim after you bought the glider when it's new, after 10 hours of flight time, when the lines and the knots settle. Maybe you find some small things that can be adjusted. You know, companies are not perfect, so there can be some small changes. If you compete, you should definitely have your wing trimmed perfectly to have an equal chance during the race. Losing 5 km per hour on a comp wing just because you did not do the trimming is stupid. Adjusting the brakes. We can't measure the brake length by a method of trim check. The fact is, the brakes mostly are made of dyneema, so they do shrink. Also, if you retrim the wing, the trailing edge will go up and the brakes will be even shorter than they were. It is super important to release the brakes after trimming and also every once in a while. How to know the correct length is to fly the wing. You release the brakes before the flight if you know that they are short, and then during the flight you push the full speed bar, full, pulley to pulley, and the brakes should still have a bit of slack. If your brakes are too short, the trailing edge is bent and it makes the wing much more unstable and prone to collapse when flying like that. Don't shorten the brakes on the Paraglider when they come from the factory. The length is as it should be. Instead, learn some other grip technique. There are wings that have pretty long brakes, but it's there when you use the full speed bar. I hope you liked this video. If necessary, watch it again, share it. I'm leaving in the description section the steps you should follow. If you like this video podcast, don't forget to subscribe by clicking the subscribe button so you don't lose the next episode. Please, if you have some questions or you want to see an episode of something that you want to know, just leave a reply below in the comment section. Because of the coronavirus, I can't do the videos that are meant to be done flying, so this will be a little bit on pause. Follow me also on my Instagram account, and if you're interested in doing some courses and coaching flights, check my school's website, paraglidingmexico.com. You can always reach this video channel by typing FLUMENparagliding.com. If you feel grateful and you like to support this video podcast, remember us next time when you want to do a good deed. PayPal donations you can do straight to our PayPal account. Fly safe and smart.